You wake to the echo of footsteps, soft and deliberate, bouncing off cold stone corridors that stretch farther than the eye can see. The light filtering through narrow, high windows is gray and thin, as if dawn itself fears to enter. Your hands graze the rough wool of your blankets, damp with night's condensation, and you feel a chill that seems to seep into your very bones. No one will answer your calls. No one notices you. You are present, yet the palace pretends you do not exist. If you find yourself drawn to the hidden corners of history, to the stories that whispered through stone halls and gilded towers, consider hitting that like button and subscribing. Wherever you are watching from, imagine the threads of time connecting us, Vienna, London, Paris, St. Petersburg, and realize that together, across continents and centuries, we are piecing together voices long thought lost. Comment below with your city, your country, and marvel at the fact that curiosity alone can make the past feel like a living room where we all sit together, listening. In the grand palaces of Europe, behind ceilings painted with angels and victories, there existed chambers that no visitor, no courtier, and no royal portrait dared to depict. These were the hidden nurseries, the rooms beyond locked doors, where children born with Down syndrome were quietly sequestered. Their parents, often rulers whose legitimacy relied on appearances and precise inheritance, struggled against a world that demanded perfection. The rules of royal bloodlines were merciless. To be anything other than an able-bodied, intellectually agile heir was to risk erasure. Yet erasure was never absolute. Within these shadowed rooms, life, small, fragile, and astonishing, persisted. Take Ferdinand of Vienna, born into the Habsburg line in the late 18th century. Photographs of his siblings show them in sailor suits, laughing for the camera, their education progressing under the watchful eye of tutors and governesses. Ferdinand, however, lived in a narrow tower room, where the only illumination came from a single shaft of light that tracked the slow, steady fall of dust motes. His attendant, a woman tasked more with supervision than care, left porridge to cool on the floor and retreated without a word. The silence was heavy, oppressive, yet within it, Ferdinand found moments of discovery. He arranged the few objects he owned, an ivory carving, a clay figurine, a ribbon torn from a gown, into intricate patterns that seemed almost like maps of invisible worlds. To the untrained eye, they were child's play. To Ferdinand, they were entire landscapes, alive with possibility. Royal physicians and advisors whispered about these children in Latin, coded notes that survived only in hidden corners of palace archives. Some called it defect, others imbalance of humors, while none dared suggest the obvious truth, that these children were simply human, differently gifted. In Vienna, Ferdinand would press his palm to the cold stone of the window, tracing the sky's gradual lightening, and listen to the city awakening below. Horse hooves clattered along cobblestones, church bells announced the hour, and merchants called their wares with cheerful insistence. Outside, the world moved with rhythm and urgency. Inside, he measured time differently, in shadows and small triumphs of pattern and repetition. In England, similar tales unfolded. Court diaries and letters, heavily censored, hint at unnamed princes and princesses who were presented to the public for only the briefest of moments before vanishing into private wings. Nurses kept meticulous notes of their daily habits, drawings, and expressions, forming quiet testament to lives erased from official memory. One governess described teaching a hidden child to recognize shapes, to hum melodies in exact sequences, to delight in the small wonders of nature, the flight of a sparrow, the peculiar curl of a rose petal, the smell of fresh hay brought to the stables. The world beyond the palace windows remained unbending and exacting, but within these secluded rooms, imagination and innocence carved a fragile refuge. Concealment often came at a psychological cost. Siblings were taught to avert their gaze or forget altogether. Parents oscillated between feigned indifference and fleeting affection, and attendants were left to balance duty with compassion. Yet even under these constraints, light seeped through. Children laughed, scribbled, and sang in a cadence of their own making. Each small act of joy was an act of defiance, a quiet insistence on existence in a space that systematically denied it. And yet, the shadows of these gilded towers were not merely protective. They were a prison. Histories remain silent, archives hold only fragments, and the world beyond the palace walls remained oblivious. Ferdinand, arranging his figurines for the 100th time, could not know if his life would leave a trace in the annals of history or vanish entirely. The last, faint echo of his laughter, the soft scraping of his hands across stone, is the closest we come to understanding these forgotten children. As the chapter closes, the window shutters rattle in the morning wind, dust dances once more in the gray light, and the palace waits for another day of silent testimony. The corridors hold their secrets tightly, and the rooms where light and shadow converge conceal more than they reveal. Outside, the world carries on, unaware that within these gilded walls, entire lifetimes, vivid, fragile, and daringly human, unfolded in the quiet. And somewhere in that darkness, Ferdinand traces another pattern, humming a tune no one will ever hear, leaving behind the first of many echoes that will haunt the corridors of history. In the morning light, a cradle rocks gently, empty, yet somewhere deep in the palace corridors, whispers linger of a child who once laughed there. The scent of polished wood mingles with fading candle smoke, and the faint rustle of silk curtains hints at the lives that were meant to unfold but were quietly erased. Outside, the city awakens with a rhythm of markets and church bells, unaware that inside, history keeps its most fragile secrets behind closed doors. Across centuries, European dynasties struggled to reconcile the unpredictable truths of nature with the unyielding demands of lineage. Royal families, bound by treaties, marriages, and the sanctity of perceived divine favor, often faced a cruel dilemma: how to handle a child who could never fulfill the political and ceremonial roles required of a prince or princess. To acknowledge their existence was to invite scandal. To hide them was to consign them to a life of silence, isolation, and erasure. Prince John of the United Kingdom was born in 1905 at York Cottage, Sandringham, the youngest son of King George V and Queen Mary. In his first 4 years, John appeared in photographs with his siblings, dressed in sailor suits and presented to visiting dignitaries. The world saw a royal child like any other, laughing, toddling, learning. But around age 4, subtle differences became apparent: seizures, delayed speech, and an inability to keep pace with lessons in languages, etiquette, and protocol. Physicians whispered in private letters of learning difficulties, yet the official narrative remained silence. By 1909, John had vanished from public view. Relocated to Wood Farm under the care of his devoted nurse, Charlotte Lalla Bill, he was surrounded by simplicity and quiet, free from the expectations that had shadowed his first years. Queen Alexandra, in her diary, described him as a boy living in his own world, finding joy in acorns, animals, and small secret pleasures, a world unseen by the rest of the royal family. France offers its own haunting examples. In the palaces of Fontainebleau, King Louis XIII and Anne of Austria bore a child whose existence survives only in the faintest echoes of medical notes and private correspondence. The infant lived merely 43 days, but even in that short span, court physicians meticulously recorded the child's distinctive features: the flat nasal bridge, a single palmar crease, the tongue protruding slightly, signs now recognized as consistent with Down syndrome. Public records declared only a frail infant who failed to thrive, leaving blame, if blame must exist, on caretakers or divine whims. Anne of Austria's private prayers, her pilgrimages to shrines seeking explanation, reveal the desperate search for understanding in a world unwilling to accept difference. Was this a punishment for the king's sins, an astrological misalignment, or simply nature taking its course? The answer was neither recorded nor celebrated, lost instead in layers of palace secrecy. The pattern repeated across the continent, Children shifted into private wings, relocated to distant estates, or raised in convents and monasteries far from prying eyes. In Russia, the Romanovs hid daughters whose names vanish from official registries, yet whose care was meticulously maintained for years by loyal attendants. Accounts describe girls playing with dolls intended for toddlers, arranging colored glass, and finding delight in sounds and textures the court might have deemed inappropriate or shameful. The lives of these children were documented not by historians or biographers, but by the quiet hand of servants who dared to see humanity where dynastic ambition saw only inconvenience. Even in kingdoms striving for modernity, the tension between duty and compassion remained. Denmark's Prince Gustav, born in 1803 to Frederick V, was never displayed to the court as a typical heir might be. Tutors, acting as secret caretakers, maintained false reports on his progress while nurturing his unique abilities, keen observation, pattern recognition, and an intuitive understanding of the world. Though he was largely hidden from public view, Gustav's life demonstrates that love and dedication could exist within enforced discretion, even as official records erased his presence. Across Europe, the recurring motifs of concealment and vanishing births reveal a chilling calculus. The greater the family's reliance on political marriages and perceived genetic perfection, the more severe the response to difference. These children, removed from genealogical charts and portraits, left behind traces only in diaries, hidden letters, and the memory of those who dared treat them with compassion. Their experiences highlight a world in which humanity was subordinate to duty, yet they also illuminate the resilience and quiet creativity that flourished in the margins. In England, France, Russia, Denmark, and beyond, the echoes of hidden laughter, soft humming, and the rustle of toys in empty rooms linger like ghosts. They remind us that for every documented vanishing heir, countless others left no trace at all. How many infants were quietly relocated? How many survived under assumed names? How many died believing themselves unloved or forgotten? These questions cannot be fully answered, yet they haunt palace corridors and archival shadows alike, suggesting that the true story of Europe's dynasties is written as much in absence as in power and splendor. And as the sun sets over the sprawling roofs of Paris, London, and Vienna, the empty cradles and forgotten wings of palaces remain. They hold the memory of lives that were lived, brief or prolonged, hidden behind doors that history has only partially opened. The echoes of tiny hands, soft giggles, and whispered prayers linger, suspended in the tension between the expectation of perfection and the quiet persistence of life itself. Somewhere, a child's footsteps brush against a stone floor unseen, leaving faint patterns invisible to the world, yet indelible in the corridors of memory. The nursery lies silent, yet a single tune threads through the dust-laden air, hummed by a small, unseen presence. Tiny fingers rearrange fragments of colored glass, marbles, and scraps of cloth into intricate patterns that only make sense to the mind shaping them. Time has passed, footsteps echo and fade, and the walls hold the memories of laughter and whispers that history refuses to record, a chorus that exists in absence as much as in sound. From the 16th century Ottoman palaces to post-war European courts, the concealment of royal children with developmental differences reveals a dark calculus of power. In Istanbul, sons of sultans were confined to the cafes, a luxurious prison within Topkapi Palace, where potential heirs were raised in isolation to prevent succession crises. Some of these princes lived decades in solitude, their only companions the walls, the sun filtering through latticed windows, and the repetitive songs they created for themselves. Guards reported sounds that confounded outsiders: singing, murmured dialogue, rhythmic tapping, as if the children were conversing with invisible peers. The cafes produced obedient and predictable rulers, or none at all, but it also bore witness to lives that never had the freedom to unfold beyond the palace walls. One such prince, whose existence was officially marked as stillborn, lived 23 years in a high, barred room, arranging thousands of glass fragments into patterns that mirrored constellations, rivers, and gardens only he understood. He hummed incessantly, the melody rising and falling with the sun, until succession upheavals threw open his cell, revealing a man whose eyes held the wonder of childhood and the quiet resignation of decades spent in solitary creativity. What thoughts passed through him in those long years, who can say? Historians are left only with the astonished accounts of palace guards, whose memoirs hint at awe and unease in equal measure. In Europe, royal strategies of concealment were more nuanced but no less absolute. Princess Giovanna of Italy, born in 1879, appeared at public events only under strict supervision. Her tutors, attentive and patient, cultivated her remarkable memory for music, her capacity to recognize patterns, and her understanding of animals. Behind the palace walls, she played, learned, and lived in ways the public would never see. Her life spanned 3 decades, ending in 1912, and though her funeral was private, her uncle, King Alberto III, remarked, "She lived as God made her, and that was enough." Even in comparatively progressive households, the tension between visibility and concealment, between love and dynastic duty, dictated the contours of childhood. The pattern of secrecy extended across generations. In Austria, the Habsburgs concealed Archduke Karl Ludwig's son, declared stillborn, yet secretly raised him in a monastery. There he became known as Felix, the happy one, living 12 years amid monks who cherished his simple, earnest joy. The child's world, filled with the rhythm of daily prayers, the warmth of human attention, and the modest tasks of communal life, stood in stark contrast to the official narrative of erasure. When he died of scarlet fever, the abbot recorded his passing with reverence. "Our Felix has returned to God, who surely loves him better than the world ever could." Even in the 20th century, concealment persisted, though circumstances shifted. The aftermath of 2 world wars, combined with evolving medical understanding, created both peril and opportunity for hidden children. Some European royals quietly placed their children with developmental disabilities into specialized facilities or under the care of devoted attendants. Records from Switzerland, Denmark, and the Netherlands reveal carefully maintained routines, secret correspondence, and hidden funds that ensured comfort, education, and care. Yet the shadow of shame remained, and the existence of these children was rarely acknowledged publicly, their lives compressed into silent footnotes in genealogies. Artifacts of these concealed existences survive in unexpected places. Secret portraits painted annually by loyal nurses, delicate drawings preserved in private boxes, and letters documenting small triumphs provide glimpses of lives lived fully, though unseen. A Prussian nurse, Emma Miller, commissioned 17 portraits of Prince Waldemar, documenting his growth from boyhood into adulthood, his distinctive features rendered with dignity. After his death in 1906, the mother refused to see the paintings, burning them before Emma's eyes. These objects, though destroyed or hidden, bear testament to a persistent humanity that defied erasure. Through centuries, the echoes of hidden children reveal the moral and structural failures of royal institutions. Power demanded perfection, and imperfection demanded concealment. Yet in the act of hiding, attendants, tutors, and even some family members bore witness to innocence, creativity, and quiet resilience. These acts of care, small, private, defiant, offer a counterpoint to centuries of silence and shame, suggesting that compassion could survive even under the most rigid hierarchies. And so, in the hush of abandoned nurseries and secret wings, the forgotten chorus continues. Fingers trace patterns on dusty floors, humming tunes that will never travel beyond the walls. These lives, erased from official memory yet vivid in fragments of preserved art, diary entries, and whispered testimonies, ask enduring questions. What does it mean to live unseen? How does history measure worth, and what becomes of those it chooses to forget? The chorus persists, a spectral melody winding through centuries of stone corridors, leaving traces invisible yet indelible, a haunting testament to lives both hidden and profoundly human.